بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين نود التعليم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم وداعا للهدى ودلالة الخير وابتغاء الله مرضاته وقرب ثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. قال الشيخ المؤلف الشيخ أبو بكر سراج الدين رحمه الله ونفعنا به وعدم الله نفع وبي وبكم في الدار. وقال الشيخ رضي الله عنه, a great loss. So this is a chapter about the well of Zamzam, as you will learn to discover. Nabi Ibrahim's prayer was answered and rich gifts were continually brought to Mecca by the pilgrims who came to visit the holy house in increasing numbers from all parts of Arabia and beyond. The greater pilgrimage was made once a year, but the Kaaba could also be honored through a lesser pilgrimage at any time, and these rites continued to be performed with fervor and devotion according to the rules which Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam and Nabi Ismail alayhi salam had established. The descendants of Nabi Ishaq salam also venerated the Kaaba as a temple that had been raised by Nabi Ibrahim. For them, it counted as one of the outlying tabernacles of the Lord. But as the centuries passed, the purity of the worship of the one God came to be contaminated. The descendants of Nabi Ismail salam became too numerous to live all in the valley of Mecca, and those who went to settle elsewhere took with them stones from the holy precinct and performed rites in honor of them. Later, through the influence of neighboring pagan tribes, idols came to be added to the stones, and finally, pilgrims began to bring idols to Mecca. These were set up in the vicinity of the Kaaba, and it was then that the Jews ceased to visit the temple of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. So this was how idols come into the holy house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Kaaba, and you will see later on how when it started. Okay, so the idolaters claimed that the idols were powers which acted as mediators between God, Allah, and men. As a result, their approach to Allah became less and less direct, and the remoter he seemed, the dimmer became their sense of the reality of the world to come, until many of them ceased to believe in life after death. So they did not believe in life after death, number one, and they saw the idols as intermediaries, mediators between Allah and men. Okay, so but in their midst, for those who could interpret it, there was a sign that they had fallen away from the truth. They no longer had access to the well of Zamzam. So what happened to the well of Zamzam? They had even forgotten where it lay. Now, the Jurhumites, who had come from the Yemen, were directly responsible. They had established themselves in control of Mecca, and the descendants of Nabi Ibrahim salam had tolerated this because Nabi Ismail's second wife was a kinswoman of Jurhum. Yeah, so to take note, what happened was that Nabi Ismail, his wife was from the tribe, from the Jurhum tribe, and the Jurhumites, they are Arabs. Now, Nabi Ismail, as we know, yeah, Ismail is not a non-Arab name, right? So he married his wife, who was Arab, and then his descendants were, you can say that they were blended into the Arab culture. Usually, you follow the genealogy of, or rather, you follow your own father in terms of race, right? In this sense, they are Arabs that was assimilated into the Arab, because they lived in Mecca, and then their mother was from an Arab tribe. All right, so they are assimilated into the Arab tradition, and they are also considered Arabs. But the time came when the Jurhumites began to commit all sorts of injustices, for which they were finally driven out. And before they left, they buried the well of Zamzam. All right. So they were driven out. Now Jurhumites were no longer in charge, or rather were no longer in power. They were driven out. All right. And then, but then what they did was, before they were driven out, they buried the well of Zamzam, and they also buried some of the treasures that they had together with the well of Zamzam. So no doubt they did this by way of revenge, but it was also likely that they hoped to return to power and enrich themselves from it, for they filled it up with part of the treasures of the sanctuary, offerings of pilgrims which had accumulated in the Kaaba over the years. Then they covered it with sand. Their place as lords of Mecca was taken by Khuza'ah. Khuza'ah is one of the tribe. Khuza'ah, an Arab tribe descended from Nabi Ismail alayhi salam, which had migrated to Yemen and then returned northwards. But the Khuzaites now made no attempt to find the waters that had been miraculously given to their ancestor. Since his day, other wells had been dug in Mecca. Allah's gift was no longer a necessity. So they thought that there were other wells around. So why would I want to find the Zamzam well? But this Zamzam well, as we know, is special, right? It's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the holy well became a half-forgotten memory. Khuza'ah thus shared the guilt of Jurhum. Okay. So they were also to blame in other respects. So because a chief of theirs, on their way back from a journey in Syria, had asked the Moabites to give him one of the idols. So you know, the other tribes, they had idols with them, right? And then after that, so on the way back from Syria, one of the chiefs said that, can you give me one of the idols? And then so they gave him Hubal, all right, which he, the chief of Khuza'ah, brought back to the sanctuary, brought back to the Kaaba, and set it up within the Kaaba itself, and he became the chief idols of Mecca. So once that one idol came in, other idols started to come in, more people could put their idols. It was also a way whereby for the people in power to say, you know, you come, welcome, your idols are welcome, and then they will also be encouraged to come and visit Kaaba, Mecca, do the pilgrimage. And as the ones in power, so they had their economy prospered in Mecca. So they gained, they became wealthier as a result of this, the idols being brought in and more people coming to visit Mecca. Yeah, so that's all. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin.